This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Nevriye for the first time. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. And so, one of the things we like to do is interview people from around the world, and we've been doing it since 2016. One of our sponsors, if you can see on the top, is Newsly, and we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. So, if you use coupon code GHOST, you can get 1 month free premium subscription there. You can listen to this podcast, this episode will be available on Newsly later tonight. And so, one of the things we want to talk about, well, this is actually episode 939 of our podcast. And what we're going to explore today is the topic of empowering moms to guide their teens away from substance abuse. So, I think that's a really important topic. And we've got the website here for those of you on audio. We've got momhelpmebook.com. And we'll repeat that later. That will be fully clickable when we're published. But again, thank you for being on the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and really excited to cover this really essential, important topic because I am so sick and tired watching moms all over the world suffer behind closed doors because, for many reasons, because they are afraid to come out. There's so much shame and stigma associated with drug use, or they don't have the necessary tools to help, or they may seek help and guidance from ill-equipped people, which all leads to one problem: losing valuable time that they cannot afford to lose. Because you know how many lives we lose every year? It's like 109,000 individual lives we lose every single year. It's increasing steadily, and I want to do my part. I want to serve, and as my gift, I'm offering momhelpmebook.com free on momhelpmebook.com on the website. So please don't delay help. It is critical. It is
Yeah, I mean, I'm a
essential,
child of the 70s.
and
And a lot of
it is
times in the
unfortunately a
1970s,
pandemic.
people didn't really understand the consequences of a lot of the substance abuse that was around at that time. Because there was a kind of counterculture and the hippie movement, and there's the whole era. People didn't understand the danger. They just thought, it was really cool. And now today, on top of what I experienced as kids,
Oh
with
my gosh.
marijuana abuse and LSD abuse, now there's like prescriptions that your grandpa might have a prescription, or your mom has, somebody in your family, or some kid gets a prescription, and they're given really dangerous drugs that are, it's not just illegal substances. There are legal substances that are out there that are being given by people they're not really prescribed to you, but you get them, and it's super dangerous.
But you are hitting an important point, and I want to thank you for that. That even legal drugs can be dangerous, and I cover that in my book as well. It can be over-the-counter medication, alcohol. Thousands of people die because of alcohol. It can lead to accidents. It can damage the organs, liver. I mean,
Yeah,
the numbers
yeah,
are unbelievably high, and it's legal. Everybody can have it starting 21, like, and nobody know, and because it is, as a society, legalized, and it is part of our culture. There's no gathering
yeah.
without alcoholic beverages, and it kind of gives the false sense of safety around alcohol. So it's really important to know that it too kills people, and it
Well, I think
too
there's a lot of issues
damages
with
the
all kinds
organs.
of
It too is
substances, and
bad
like
for the brain.
alcohol is like, maybe the first one people get because in a lot of people's homes, it's not illegal, like you said. And so it's available. And that's usually sometimes when I was a kid back in the 70s, the first thing kids got into was dad's beer or dad's alcohol that was just sitting around that wasn't controlled. And kids would go and sneak their father's alcohol, and then it got passed around. and so that was like like the first gateway
Oh
into
yes.
getting into
Oh yes.
bad news. And being a musician, a lot of people thought like, "Oh, you musicians, you're all into it." But to me, it's like in order to play, I have to be present, and I can't be present if I'm doing substances. So there's some people feel, "Oh, you have to be in this state," but I'm a musician here to tell people you don't have to be in a state to be able to
Yes.
play. You kind of have to know how to play. You know, so so that,
You have to be exactly. You have to be
yeah,
present, and you don't need help from the outside. You don't need substances to be at your best,
yeah, the
to have the
passion is
energy.
there.
Like
So
if you're passionate
yeah,
about
some people
something,
think that
the energy
artists
will
to
come
be an artist, you
naturally,
have to use
right? You don't
substances,
need help.
and it's a crutch, and
Yes.
it's not the truth. And it's a band-aid.
Yes. It is a band-aid. It is a band-aid that's only gonna, hurt you more in the long run because you get used to it. The brain gets used to it. It will want more and more and more. And the problem, and then the small problem becomes a big problem. That's how addiction starts, right? It starts with one time. It starts with regular use, frequent use, and very frequent use, which is the road to addiction.
Mhm.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
we are
cigarettes.
dealing. I forgot to mention other legal
Vaping's very
drugs.
bad.
Other legal drugs. How about cigarettes? All the vaping that teens. Uh, it's so in right now. Like juuling and all that stuff is everywhere in all high schools. And I want to really highlight the importance that we really need to intervene before it becomes a problem. So you probably heard of the saying, "A pound of cure is worth what is it? A pound of cure is
Out of cure,
worth a
yeah,
pound
yeah,
of
yes.
no, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure," something like that. Yeah, I got it. I got it. And we have to intervene before it becomes a big, big problem. And it starts in schools. So, what happens in schools is kids get educated about drugs. Great. They get a flyer home. Moms usually throw that away, or they may read it and not pass it on. So, we have to speak the teens' language. We have to go to schools and motivate them and really work on their mindset and empower them so they don't feel the need to
Mhm.
to go for substances, whether it's for peer pressure or be accepted or feel better or because they are stressed. We have to really, people use drugs for all kinds of reasons. We need to empower these kids so they can
Well, I
feel
think
their
what I
needs
find is, like,
in a healthier
like,
way
when I
and
talk to
not
a lot of
in
adults,
a destructive way.
that have come onto the show, and they've gone through this as a child. Usually, a lot of life coaches, a lot of mentors, they've kinda gone through issues. A lot of times it's addiction, and it's substance abuse of whether alcoholism or something else. And a lot of times they basically indicated as a kid, they had a lot of fear, and the fear was overcome by the substance. At least they thought that they were using it to loosen up, to
Hmm.
be less fearful, because it's hard. I think this is what happens when young people, like, you get to a party. Are you going to be honest and just be straight edged, or are you going to try to get loosened up so you can feel less insecure? And I think it's hard to kind of do things straight edge and be honest because it could be painful. And so a lot of people are trying to kind of prevent that pain, but then they replace it with another pain. So I think it's that they're teaching kids how to be more authentic and not be scared of their emotions,
It's
and then deal with the consequences of bullying, which could drive you into the wrong path. But maybe you can talk more about that from your perspective.
it's you you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that addiction starts usually during teen years. So that's why I wrote the book Mom Help Me, specifically for mothers who have teens going down the road, or maybe they are already addicted. So we need to intervene as quickly as possible before they become adult because it's easier. they're still under your control, they're still living in your house, in your household, you still have a level of control, you can still guide them before they truly kind of like destroy their life. And unfortunately, and I have lost women that I was working with, that I get to meet in jail. I was serving these wonderful young ladies and to overdose, and they were like in their 20s, and I'm like, oh my, I need to do something. I need to do something right now to educate mothers, empower mothers, so they can take proactive steps before they are in their 20s, like early on, like as soon as they find out. And here's another problem I want to highlight: as soon as they find out. But sometimes parents are really, really slow finding out. If they sometimes find out about the drug use when it's already a full-blown addiction. So I do cover in my book how to detect
Mhm.
substance use, whether it's a drug paraphernalia, all the tools, all the random tools. For example, why do you carry a Q-tip in your pocket? Why do you have so many lighters around you? Why are you wearing long sleeve shirt on a hot day? It's little things like that. We just don't pay attention to that. So drug paraphernalia, behavioral science, and physical science. I go in very detail on all these three, and and I want to educate and empower mothers so they can intervene, plus be the best support system for their child. So it's not just finding out.
Mhm.
So now you found out, what are you going to do about it? Now you have to confront them, right? What are you going to, and usually common strategies really, I found, do fail. And it's really important to find why these strategies fail. And some
Mhm.
of these, and then some of the
Yeah.
examples are: parents rely on punishment. Punishment does not solve the problem. It only makes things worse. Only gives the teen another reason to seek drugs for comfort, right? Individuals use drugs to fulfill a certain need, right? There is a need for whatever reason, and punishment is not filling that need. So we need to find out why, what is causing it, and try to
Yeah.
help and intervene, and meet those needs in a healthier way.
Yeah.
And many other reasons. Maybe sometimes the parents are not the best example. There are many parents using drugs on themselves, drinking with their teens. I mean, it's you have to show responsible
Yeah.
behavior,
I was wondering
because they're
about
going to
that.
do
Like,
what you do. They're not going to do
what
what you
if the
tell them to
parent,
do.
like, what if the father or the mother
So be
or
the
the
best
uncle
example.
is
Yeah,
the problem, right? So, like, like, do as I say, don't do as I do doesn't really work, right? Like,
yeah.
if you
It's only, yes, it only normalizes. So they grow up in that household. They think it's normal. They think it's nothing bad. Oh, mom wouldn't do it if it was that bad. And they're curious. They start one, two times, and then they get addicted. So if you want to, anybody listening, please hear me out. If any parents out there want to help your child, and you are on drugs, and you really care and want to help your child, get help first. You need to get help first, because if you
be
get
the role
clean,
model. Yeah,
if you
gotta
get off drugs, you will be the inspiration your child needs. They will look up to you. They will say it is possible. Like my mom did it. She was strong enough. It's possible. She did it. I can do it too. So you got a problem, handle your problem, take care of your problem,
yeah, I
and
think
then
it's the
and
role
then
model.
you can
'Cause,
you will
my
be better
father
equipped to
was
guide your
kind of a
child.
weekend drinker. And the thing is,
Definitely.
like, sometimes some kids, like, saw that and then they said, "Well, that gives me permission to do it." But I saw it and I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but how it changed his behavior. I thought it made him kinda mean. I thought it made him kinda not it's like when I saw that, I actually ended up and people tell me, and I
Hmm.
was a sociology major and I, been a therapist, and a lot of times, like, that example actually will drive the kid into the same behavior. But for me, alcohol has never been an issue. I never got into it because I was so kind of like appalled by it. I was appalled by what I saw him doing and I didn't like it. And I actually would go and say, I think you need to get help. And then I get in trouble for saying it. But my
Yes.
whole point was like sometimes I guess it's not the common thing because a lot of times what happens is you repeat the behavior of the parent. But for my case, it's like I just was so I didn't like it, and I didn't want to replicate it. But I don't know if that is something that happens most of the time. I've heard that that is not what happens.
Right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And many people will agree with this. It's not just alcohol, it's any substance, because what does substances do? It does mess up your brain, right? It is working, make doing the high feelings in the brain cells. So all the dopamine release, and it's unbelievably dangerous, and it alters the brain chemistry, the function, the structure. People can get mental health problems. It does change your character. It does change character, and unfortunately it's for the worse. They lose a lot of positive qualities, when they were before honest and very friendly, and and never do steal. When they addicted to drugs, they start lying to get their hands on money. They dishonesty, and they may need to go, you know do some criminal activity to get their hands on. It's unfortunately changes people for the worse,
What are like the top
and if they
mistakes
become
that parents
unrecognizable.
do when they find out their kids doing drugs? Like, what are the like maybe top 5 things that are like things that you shouldn't do that you find people doing?
So many times they recognize it way too late, so they need to find out. And going back a couple steps before, the parent child relationship is unbelievably important. The relationship with the mother and the child is even more important than the relationship with the child and a friend. So if, like, work on your relationship, be a part of their world, and make them be a part of your world, and not just when things fall apart. So have a nice, unbreakable bond between you and your
Mhm,
child, so they trust you. You don't want your child be scared of you. You want your child come to you when they feel, really, when they have adversity in their life, when they are being bullied, when they are stressed, when they have these weird thoughts, to hurt themselves or others.
mhm.
You want them be comfortable to discuss with you good and the bad, and so they don't feel the need to patch whatever the problem is with drugs. So parent child relationship is vital. Finding out, being vigilant, being ahead of the trend, is vital. Be a part of your child's world, and their environment. Who are they hanging out with? We need to be vigilant. What kind of, look in their social websites. What are they sharing? Who are their friends? Or what are their friends doing? Try, if you have the opportunity, meet their parents. So it really, we need to prevent before the
Yeah.
problem happens. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, punishment, because they don't know. Or they may go to people who have no idea how to help. They may go ask their friend for advice, or the pastor, or the guidance counselor in school. It does need really strategic planning and a game plan to guide these kids to recovery, toward rehab, and not really, not force them,
Mhm.
because teens hate being told what to do. They don't like being dictated, but you can gently guide them, and there are some techniques that I'm sharing in my book. And I really hope every parent, whether you have a child or not who is using drugs, maybe you have a friend, maybe you have a relative,
Yeah, and
it's
like,
it's it's not
as
just good for teens, it would work with anybody. So, and how to confront, like strategies, how to confront them, right? Let's say you just found out, you got the news, you're devastated. How are you going to confront? Calm yourself first, and when find a good timing, and 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 Calm your
Yeah.
child. Your child may get scared because you found out. It may be scared it gets punished or maybe feel embarrassed.
Yeah, you shouldn't
So
kinda
you have to
go
calm
old
your
school
child down
and be,
because
like,
otherwise you're not
anger.
going to get through
Like,
them.
you get a dad comes into the
And
situation, he's so angry, he's so upset, he's kinda laying the law down, and it's a top-down kinda not listening to the kid, and I don't think that's gonna work with a teenager, because, like, if you come in and you're like, "Okay, well, dad drinks, dad
yes.
gambles, dad does these things, and then he's telling me
Oh,
to do something, and he's a hypocrite." So why would you listen?
I know. I know. I mean, exactly, exactly. I mean, I mentioned that in my book too. If you do it yourself, if you're heavy drinker, if you're just using drugs around your kids and whatever, you're just not being the best example. I mean, you lose all credibility. They're not gonna listen. So that's why I'm very passionate about you get help first, be the role model, be the example your child deserves. Because no parent want their child go down that path. No parent ever wants their child get hurt because addiction is the road, unfortunately, that kills people, that just totally destroys your life from all
Well,
fronts.
it's interesting 'cause today
It's
you got the social media that you need to
it's
kinda
it's
track
it's
who your
it's
kids are,
unbelievable, and we need
chatting
to
with,
really.
and then you kinda need to know, you don't just assume that they're going to a safe place. Like, what if they go your home doesn't have alcohol, right? But the best friend's house they go to, their best friend's dad's an alcoholic or their mom's an alcoholic, and there's alcohol over the house and it's not controlled. So your house might be controlled and you might be a good example, but the home they're hanging out at is not a good example. I mean, you don't know enough about it.
Yes, and yes, and sometimes. Exactly, exactly. And sometimes teens use drugs at their friend's house. They may do it when the parent is not home or after school. I mean, parents may have no idea. They may never see the drug.
Mhm.
But it's unfortunately so readily available even in the schoolyards that we need to really start educating these kids. How does a good friend look like? What a good friend would not offer you drugs. A good friend would not pressure you. A good friend would not make you do things that would hurt you. We need to educate these kids how a really good social environment should look like, and kind of make them aware about the negative friendships, right? About if somebody does that, stay away. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to say no. And I tell
Mhm.
my parents that I'm working with, you know, teach them refusal skills. Teach them refusal, how to say no, like practice, because the brain does not know between how imagination and the reality. So it's actually whatever scenario you're going through, the brain will remember it. It will create the
Yeah,
pathways, and when they are confronted in that situation, they will know what to do. They're not going to be scared. Or so how to say no, like practice. So let's pretend I'm giving you, it's just one time, just use it, it's so fun. And then you practice with the child how to respond. No, I'm good. I don't need that. I feel just fine. Or just walk away. It's okay to just walk away. Or call me, I'll pick you up. Whatever environment you're in and you
well,
don't feel
sometimes some
comfortable,
kids are taught to be so
call me, I'll
passive
come and pick you up.
or so obedient that if they get in a situation where there's alpha type people, that they're gonna tend to kinda be like sheep and follow. Like, so if you never teach your kid to, "Oh, they're a good kid, they always do what they're told." But what happens if they get an alpha type person that replaces you and tells them what to do? Then you've never taught them how to respond to that because you've kinda set them
And
up to be
it
in
now
that
now we
situation, and you didn't realize you're actually not giving them the right tool for the way things are.
again we circling back to the importance of educating the kids early on, going to schools. I have not seen Maybe there is. Maybe I'm wrong. I have not seen one lesson that works on the child mindset. And we have to put these important things in the curriculum because the mindset is going to determine if they're going to believe in themselves, if they're going to go for their dreams and goals, if they're going to, you know, be try to be their best self. I have
Mhm.
not seen one curriculum that has these kind of positive psychology and you know, all the other mindset things that I'm teaching, how to deal with stress, how to deal with adversity, and like these are life skills that will not learn on their own. Why don't we provide these kids? Why don't we just empower them? Why don't we teach them how to learn right? We teach them you go
Yeah.
learn, but many don't know how to learn. They don't know these little tools and strategies and tricks how we remember things, and they get stressed out. And when they're stressed out, you know, they
Yeah,
may
this
try
seems
to
like
find
the
comfort in
same
drugs
dynamic
for whatever reason. So we need to
well, the same dynamic that causes bullying,
empower parents
right?
and
I
kids.
can get people into, like, the hip crowd, right? So, you get bullied into being in the hip crowd because, like, the hip crowd, they're all smoking, they're all vaping, and so then anybody who's not vaping, they put them into a, "Oh, you're uncool, you're not cool."
Yeah,
So how do you
yeah,
stand up in an environment where you're going to get ostracized, right? So if you're going to get, I've seen this in high-end boarding schools, like boarding schools, the parents pay the kids to be there, and they
yeah.
still have this problem. It's just kind of really kind of
Hmm.
pushed underground, but it's still there. They think that their kids are safe, and they're not any safer than the public school. They can get into even more trouble because they
I'm
have
sure.
access to the kids have access to even more dangerous things. Because I went to some schools and the kids had access to
I've
very dangerous things, and people assumed they didn't, or
I
they assumed
know.
people would be controlling it, and they weren't.
Absolutely. I mean, even in jails. I mean, people sneak in drugs. I don't know where they find a hole to sneak in the drugs, but it is everywhere. Like if you want to get your hands on drugs, it is not going to be too hard. So, few things that we can do to empower our children. We need to educate ourselves as parents because the only thing parents can control is you. And there are many other factors, the environment, their genes, their temperament, that also affects what they're going to do, how they're going to react to in each situation. But you have to be at your best because that's if you are at your best, you are educated, you can pass it on to your children, you have a good
Mhm.
relationship, and you can overshadow all other factors, right? You can help them, you can empower them to say no. If they have so confident, they will step up to for themselves, they will not be passive. And schools, that's where we can reach most kids, is schools. Put it in the curriculum, teach these kids, empower them. And also these people
Mhm.
who also work with bullies, you know, usually people who do bully have some, you know, some problems in their household. Maybe they need an outlet to let go of their aggression. They want to feel powerful because
Yeah,
they may feel
yeah, kinda
powerless at home. So we need to work
prevent
with
that
both
bully.
sides,
Yeah,
not
if you
just the
can both
passive
deal with
kids but
the
also
both
the ones
sides of
that
it.
do
The
bully
other thing
the
is, like,
passive kids.
if you think
Exactly.
about, like, how do you get a kid to understand the consequences of, like, there are stories, like, that there are real stories, and, sometimes, when I was in school, they used to have this thing for driver's ed where they showed the result of driving drunk in really dangerous, horrific crashes that were caused and people died, and they actually showed the wrecks, and they showed these people died from drinking and driving. So there's examples in history where, like, it was an NBA player who tried cocaine for the first time, Len Bias, and he died of an overdose first time he ever took it. So if you can kinda give people not to scare somebody, but you tell somebody these are real things,
Right.
and, it is yeah, 'cause I don't know if it
Well, you can scare them. I mean, you can scare them. Like on cigarette packages, we see
mhm,
all kinds of scary stuff, but it does not prevent anybody from smoking. Whoever wants to smoke, they smoke. I mean, in each package, cigarettes can kill you, and you have
doesn't
these
work.
graphic images, and they found that they're not that effective actually. What I did find very helpful in based on my experience or observation, what really helps me get across the teen, show them the consequences of drugs
Mm.
is really show them images how they're gonna look like. It is the scariest thing to teens.
Oh,
They
vanity.
not gonna look
The
their best.
vanity
They look way aged. They look unbelievably sick. And just just Google, like I really did that. Like just Google, put it in your
Oh,
search
yeah, your
engine.
teeth
How
the
does
teeth.
a person
Yeah,
look like who uses methamphetamine? And look at their pictures.
that's a good
It
thing
is
because kids are
unbelievably
trying to,
scary. Like if
they at
this
that
does
age,
not
they
scare
got the
you,
vanity going
I
on,
don't know what would
and they
scare
wanna
you.
look their best. If you show them it's not glamorous, they makes you emaciated and your teeth fall
I
out, then
know.
you get yellow
Yes,
skin, your hair falls out. If you
it's
show them
not.
those
Yeah, this
consequences,
is what's going
it's
to
like a
happen.
horror film for real.
Yeah, and a couple other things. Yeah, horror film, literally, or because it is the nightmare. They're like that's the nightmare life that they're going to live, and who wants to live like that? I don't know anybody that would willingly do it, but because drug addiction gradually starts and escalates, nobody wakes up one day and says and makes the decision. Today, I'm going to start drugs and be addicted and want to look like that. Nobody. Everybody says, "Oh, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen," and but it does if you keep doing it. And some other consequences that I like discussing with my students and
Mhm.
clients is what it does not to your brain, right? What it's going to do to your cognitive skills. Your memory is going to suck. You're not going to be able to think clear. You're going to lose total control because the control system in the brain will be kind of like hijacked. um, what else? You all kinds of mental health issues. Plus, Mariana, use of Mariana drops IQ points. I think 5 to 8 points in IQ, and those IQ points that you lose,
Yeah, it's gonna
which in plain English, excuse my language, is going to make you stupid. Okay, you're going to lose IQ points, and those points are not coming back. Even if you quit the drug, even if you quit the Mariana later in your adulthood, because you used it during teen years when this brain was still forming. I have to highlight, when you're a teen, your brain is still forming,
mhm.
going under these pruning processes. It is maturing. It's kind of like foundation of a building. If it's not built right, the structure is not, it's going to collapse, right? It's the same thing with the brain. You have to protect it, and drugs just makes the brain, causes brain damage. It is irreversible, again irreversible, drops IQ points, it does not come back, and it's not
You're
optimal
self-limiting. You're
conditions
creating a
to go
ceiling for
after your
yourself.
goals and dreams
Like,
and
a
live
lot of
your
young
best
people,
life.
they like, "The
It's not.
world's like my oyster, I can get anywhere I want." But if you introduce the
Exactly.
substances, you're gonna probably, lessen your ability to be successful, lessen your ability to actually meet your dreams, to actually do what you said you wanna do. You're highly unlikely to do it because all your money is gonna go to the dealer, right? And all your time is gonna be spent getting into the addiction and not going after your
Oh,
dreams. And
yes.
so it's going to say, did you yourself? You're like, so if you don't want somebody to stop you, you're stopping yourself. So if you show somebody that you're actually, I don't want somebody to tell me what to do. It's like, well, you're actually putting the ceiling on yourself. You're telling yourself to do something and you're
Yes.
not in control.
Right. Absolutely right. But when you're addicted to drugs, nothing else matters because the drugs release such high amounts of dopamine that nothing else competes. Nothing else. Everything that you enjoyed before in your life takes a backseat. The only primary goal is to use the drug and then try to find the next dose. So you get the money, use the drug, and then you go hunt for whatever you're doing. Maybe you do have the money to get the second dose and for tomorrow and the day after. So nothing else matters because just like the brake in a car, the self-control system in the brain will be hijacked. It won't work. It is a neurological damage, right? It's a brain damage. And here we have to step in. We have to step in and help these people because now they cannot think straight. Now they don't have control. We as a society have to step in, and my goal with my mission is help as many families as possible and educate mothers because why mothers?
We're gonna find out. Yeah.
Because they are the first ones who know. They are the most involved in their child's life, and they are most of the time the primary caregiver. And I want to empower and educate mothers so they can intervene, but also prevent it from happening in the first place, and how to be the best
I think
example for their child, so we can
I think
prevent
one of the
tragedies
problems, like being a child of
like
the
the ones that I
'70s, there was a lot of
experienced.
people that thought you could have like casual drug use, that you wouldn't get addicted. You know, they thought they you couldn't get addicted to cocaine. They thought you couldn't get really. It would just be casual use. I only do it at the concert. I only do it then. I only do it here. And what ended up happening into a lot of those people is by the time they're in their 40s and 50s, they found themselves heavily addicted to a lot of things, and they didn't have any control because it was like the wrong message was being put out there.
Right.
And I don't know how many
Yes.
kids today still kind of think
Absolutely.
they can just be a weekend vapor, or they can just go and kind of have binge drink at a frat party or at some dance, and it doesn't matter, and not understand that once you open that door, it's kind of hard to shut the door. So I think those people don't understand the science of addiction. They don't understand like what they're actually
Exactly.
putting in their body and what it's doing. And so, is there a way to kind of show them like the full holistic picture, and not the glamorous picture? They might get, oh, I'm at the rave, I'm at the EDM event, I'm at the festival. There's a kind of romanticism. Is certain types of activities for young people have a romanticism about it. And
Yes.
how do you get rid of that? Yeah, to get that rid of that.
I know, it's just like alcohol. I know, it's just like alcohol. It is because everybody's doing it. They think it's normal. They think it's acceptable. They feel like they belong if they do it too. Um, yeah, what can we do? We have to educate again, but in a language that they would understand. So just telling them don't do it is not going to do it. It's not going to help. We have to speak their language. We have to empower these children that and what it does to their brain, to their health, and how their life will look like if they do it. And 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 every child, every teen has big dreams, and we just have to empower them to go after it and build their confidence. Maybe they don't believe in themselves. Maybe they think they
Mhm.
they are not capable. But the human potential is limitless. Like when I share that with my students, that it is absolutely limitless. There's nothing that you cannot learn. Absolutely nothing you cannot. It has been researched. There's nothing is of like a genius, and nothing built in. No built in. Yeah, intelligence. Like you can learn anything. What we need
Mhm.
to teach them is that discipline is more important than intelligence. They may not believe that they're smart enough, but if you have discipline, you can beat people
Well, I think if you
who
think
are
about like
highly
athletics
intelligent
and even being a
and not do
musician,
anything
right?
all day long.
The reason I can play is because I practice. The reason that an athlete can do what they do
Yes.
is the 10,000
Yes.
hours
I
worth of
mean,
practice
yes.
they got to perfect what they do, and the same thing happens with musicians.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, like, the reason I can play a bass
I was
guitar
just gonna say that.
is 10,000 hours of play. Yeah,
10,000 hours. That's the only difference between the high performing. Yes, that's the difference between high performing musicians and average musicians or music teachers. They're excellent too, but that's the difference between top high level musicians and average musicians is the hours of practice you put into it. 10,000 hours. I think music teachers had like about 4,000 hours in their pocket, if I'm not wrong. But it is the
mhm,
hours that count, right? How much practice do you have? You can be anything you want. We have to teach these. We have to teach this stuff. There's so many wonderful researchers out there who put all the science right in front of us,
mhm,
and we just have to deliver it to our students. They're not going to pick up a magazine or read a research article.
yeah.
Like
It's
I
not
struggled
approachable. You
reading or
gotta
making
make it
sense out
appro
of it. Like it's written in a way that's like, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't even look like English to me. I know. Make it easy to understand and make it easy and fun for them, you know? That's how we learn, right?
well,
When we
that's why I
learn, when
think,
we have
like, a
fun doing
life
it, and when
coach
we like, the what is
well, I think the life
the
coach
way it is
method
being taught. Well,
compared to,
you
like, a
know,
doctor or a parent that's yelling
exactly.
is
You hit
is
the
they
nail on the
if a
head.
kid
Like,
is in a forum and they're kinda like it's a give and take where you're communicating back and forth and you're listening. I think a lot of teens probably, if they get an adult and they don't feel like the adult's listening, they're gonna tune out. And if the
exactly.
adult is coming, top down and being very judgmental, they're gonna tune out. So if you come into it as the best teacher, the best
I
teachers
know.
I ever
Yes.
had with the teachers that you wanted to go to class and they made you feel like you wanted to participate and you raised your hand and you wanted to talk and they listened to what you had to say and they incorporated it into their lesson plan. They weren't so rigid that they found a way to hear what you were saying. And I think if people hear it, if you can hear your teen, they'll
And
probably solve it better than they kind of top down in it.
absolutely, I totally agree. And I want to highlight, share with you. They are our young students are so hungry for this kind of information. I remember, a few years back when I was teaching psychology and human growth and development in college. 90% of the time I covered the material. I had students who listened, I had students who were on their phone all the time, and I had students who were totally engaged or not. But at the other 10%, the last 10%, the last 10 to 15 minutes of my class, we were talking about exactly the topics that we were talking about life, how they can be their best, how they can, that how they can perform at their highest level. Like I would teach them tricks how they can learn, and about their, mindset, and like how to, that body posture is even so important because it releases all the chemicals that will make you feel empowered. They would be so vigilant. 100% of my classroom, they would with big eyes because they want to know. They were so hungry to learn this. It's like nobody told them this kind of stuff before.
Yeah,
Like, why don't we teach these kids in
I
middle
think a
school
lot of
or high
people
school?
they're so
They
rigid,
need to
I
know
think
because it
some
can help
teachers are
them.
so
It
into
can help them.
maybe something that used to work, but it's like it doesn't really work because it's like if something's not like a two-way street, what I find is like when I work with people as a producer, if I just go top down, tell somebody red mark their music and say fix this, fix this, fix this, fix this, then the person's gonna start to tune out because they feel like they're not being listened to. I'm not taking any of their ideas. They keep on changing all of their ideas. But if I make it so that you can have a two-way street and you can actually, feel
Yeah,
like
I
you're
mean, yeah.
contributing and you're listening. I think that's where people start to have a better experience because you get to hear what their problems are and then try to come up with solutions that are kind of like individual solutions. That's why like coaching I think works is because you're listening to that person and you're hearing what their issues are and you're not just trying to put them in a box. So well, you're in this box and this is the solution for somebody in this box and this you're listening to what their issue is at hand, and then you actually customize to their situation.
Uh, uh, I, you really make an excellent point. I feel like, I'm sure many will agree with me that we need to change our curriculum. It's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like dated, right? What used to work 100 years ago no longer does. We have like these technological advances. We have this big AI coming our way. Like, let's teach these kids to use it, and to empower themselves, like,
Mhm.
and just make them be engaged in the classroom,
Yeah,
that not only teaches them but
to
also
be
empowers them, and and then again deliver the message in a way that they receive it, like that they look forward to it, like, today I'm going to learn about something about my life. It's going to take me to the next level and be so excited about it. And they will be so excited. I want our students to be so
yeah,
excited about their future, that they will not need to use drugs. That is my approach. That's why the things that I'm teaching my students works, because they feel so juiced, they feel so happy and looking forward, and they make these mini progresses. I teach them a couple of things, how they can learn better, and they see these progresses. They see progress, and they see it's working, and they have this, um they have the courage to take a bigger step and bigger step and bigger step, and then it accumulates, right? And then you have these ripple effect, what used to start as a small dream, and taking actions, and now it's getting bigger and
well, I
bigger
think it's
and bigger.
really
It is so absolutely amazing to
what
watch
I
them.
try to take is
So
like
absolutely
I'm an
amazing.
electronic musician and I
And i'm
use
i'm so
synthesizers.
passionate about it. I'm
And what I
sorry.
try to show people is like a lot of times like people are not into math and they say, well, how can I use math? I can't understand it. But like in what I do, I take waveforms, like ramp waves, square waves, sine waves, and I can turn them into sounds. So I could take a triangle wave and get a bell sound out of it. And I could show somebody on an oscilloscope what that does. And they can show them like, well, when you're doing that algebra and that calculus, the algorithm, you can modify that wave and you can get it to do certain things and you can predict what it's going to do. And then it becomes a sound that you could actually use. Then you can get somebody to be more interested. Yeah, you could get somebody to be more
I mean, there's
interested
so
in
many
something that
fun
they
ways
thought
to
they weren't
learn,
going to be
right?
interested in because you used the creative aspect of it to create something that was music from math, from geometry, from calculus, from algorithms. And then you say, oh, that and the same thing happens with video games. Like you show somebody how an algorithm can actually make something that you as a kid find relatable. Like you actually see this character moving in the physics behind it and the math behind it. And then you say, wow, that's actually cool. And I could actually get into that because now I fully understand it. You're not just showing me a two-dimensional vision of what it is. You show me the full three-dimensional holistic vision, which I think the kids today want to see. Well, what does that do for me? Why should I learn that? What's that going to do? How does that apply to the real world? And how does that apply to me? And if you can show somebody that,
I know. I mean, I totally agree. I totally agree. Like, we have students who fall asleep in the classroom, in every classroom. I mean, we have to make learning fun, right? We have so many tools at our fingertips now. We can make learning so fun for them that they create something, right? They can be creator of something, They have so many interesting tools that it just I don't think it's being leveraged enough yet
Yeah, because you
in our
could use
classrooms,
AI to
and we need to
show
do a better job at that.
the
And
effect of substances
again,
on brains,
empower
right?
those
And
passive
show
students.
actual get it
And
to actually do a presentation. And so, yeah, and
oh yeah, you put your picture, AI will show you how you're going to look like.
yeah, and if you
Exactly,
show
AI is
that
going
in
to
a dynamic
show you how you're going to look like
yeah, if
10
you show
years
that in a
if you continue
dynamic
using that.
class, right, you
I don't
show
think you're
the
going to
effect
want to
on
look
the
like that. It's
outward body,
absolutely
on the
devastating.
internal body, like what happens to your
It's
kidneys,
absolutely.
what happens to your liver through cirrhosis, and you do it in time lapse, and you show that kid time lapse. Look what happens to your liver. Look what happens to your kidneys. Look what happens to your heart. You know, then people are like, "Oh, that's
You
real."
know,
You know, it's not just words.
I you know, I yeah, I found you can teach them all kinds of biology, but what I found is we don't see at the inside, right? We don't see the inside. That's why smokers still smoke, because they don't see how the lungs looking like after
Mm,
smoking 5, 6, 10 years. They don't see it. Because they don't see it, they think it doesn't exist. So just telling these students about the organs is
okay.
just gonna, I know for I know based on my
Mhm.
experience, they're not gonna care. What they care about,
So if you
this
show
right
them you get
here, what can they
wrinkles,
see?
if they show their teeth,
They want to look
yeah, if
good.
their
They
teeth
want
go
to look at
bad and
their
they get
best.
wrinkles and their skin
Especially
starts to look
teens are
bad,
very
that's more gonna
conscious.
show
Then
them than whether or not they get cirrhosis of the liver. They don't get that. So,
and also and not just like that, I mean, it's a domino effect, right? What is going to happen? Like, you're not never going to be you never be able to gonna be you will never be able to work. That means you will always be poor. That means you will never have money. You will not have a steady life. No family. If you do have family, you will
mhm,
probably have no money to raise your children in the best circumstances. You will never be able to afford vacations because you will be busy spending that money for drugs, and on and on and on and on. You will be a burden to your family forever. Like, don't be. I teach my students, and this is one of the things that get really big eyes, and they are so hungry to hear this. I teach them, do not be a burden to your family. When you're 30, 35, you should have had to have your life, have a steady life,
mhm,
and never be a burden to your child. It's so hard to raise children. I raised 2 children. It's so hard to raise children. After they go to college, it's time for parents to focus on their life and not worry about the child's well-being. Oh, is my child safe? Oh, is my child using,
mhm,
is my child going to come home safe? A parent should not be worrying about that after they turn 20. And then they should not be a burden to their family when they're at least 30, 35, finish college, have a career, and get your life together. You want to be able to help your mother. You want to be able to help your father. If they cannot pay their rent, you want to step in. You want to be so strong that you're able to help them and not them helping you at a certain age. That's why I want to help teens so they don't turn into adults who use drugs. And because just helping one person, saving one teen, will help, you know,
well, yeah,
help many, many, many family members along
it's
the
like,
way. It
as
helps
a
suffering for
sociologist,
many
there's this
people.
thing called a
That's why
macrocosm,
I focus for,
right? So, in
yeah.
the microcosm is the individual, and the macrocosm is like everybody, right? So when you help individuals, that actually helps society because it lessens the group impact. So if you have a group impact of a bunch of individual addicted people, they're less productive. They can drain their family. They can drain society. They're not responsible. They're not civic minded. They're not participating. Anybody that doesn't vote or doesn't participate, they're not a citizen being within the whole of the society, so they kind of drain it, on society. They're not moving it forward. So if you start to think about the cost of that, it's not just that one person. is the cascading effect of all those people who have that same kind of behavior. And so you have to start to take responsibility and say, "Well, it's not my problem." Actually, if you live in
Exactly.
society, it's a group problem. You're in that. You're in.
It is our problem. It is everybody's problem. And I'm so glad you mentioning this. It is everybody's problem. When when these people who use drugs end up being criminals, they go to jail.
Yeah,
Who's paying for
taxpayers.
their
Yeah,
who's paying for this? We as taxpayers pay for it, right? And they may, and we'll breathe the same air. They will be around us. We want our neighborhoods safe. We need them be a
yeah. It
participating member
contributes
in
to
our
the homelessness.
community. We don't need them. We don't want them as a burden. We need to empower them, and so they can go pay taxes, so we can use that money
Yeah,
to
I mean
build
the
more
societal
schools and make it
consequences.
better. So it is everybody's problem, and sometimes
But
people
I think we
thinks,
live in,
because
I
I
live
don't
in New
have any
Hampshire. We
family
have
member,
a
it's
big
not my
homeless
problem.
problem where people are living in the woods,
Yeah,
and we had situations where some of these homeless people, they actually, you know, attack people and hurt people. It's because they kind of fell off the grid because they were outside of society. Most of them are heavily addicted and have a lot of problems, and they're living in these camps, and then they potentially are threatening the overall society. So it's like an impact of not taking care of that person is now they're settling into these homeless populations, and they affect everybody. And so it's like there's got to be the
yes,
overall consequences. You can't just like let it alone and think
it
it
is.
goes away. You have to take responsibility for, like you said, you're starting at the beginning. Like take responsibility for your own family, your own children under your tutelage. It's like do everything you can to make sure that they don't end up in a homeless camp. You know, they don't end up in prison.
Exactly. Exactly. We need to help those in need, right? I know some people do not want to be helped, but there are many who need us. There are many who do want to get a job and have a steady life, have a family. It is everybody's responsibility, and we all have to do our part, right? It could be us, it could be our kids, it could be somebody that we love and know, but we live in the same on the same planet. It is our
You
responsibility
know,
to reach a helping hand and not look down to them. Right, ask them. Maybe you can talk to them. Ask. Everybody has a story. Like, everybody has a story. Many have a tragic story. Many have been traumatized. They had abuses. They have, like, lost a loved one. They may have suffered from a mental health issues. They all have a story that they would love to share with you. Talk to them. Ask them how they are doing. They really crave for attention. They crave for love and caring and connection.
yeah,
And we all have it in us. It's free, right?
yeah, you
We
do
can
have
give it
to.
to them. If you see somebody, ask them how they are doing. They love it. I love having these mini conversations. It's really gives me the opportunity to dive deeper into their world and understand. And I learn, what happened in your childhood, and I learn the mistakes that parents have done, and I use those teaching with my
Yeah, I mean that's
clients.
the
So I
whole.
not only can
I mean
I
that's what I
teach, but
found from
also I
doing all these
learn
podcasts is every time I
that
talk
I
to
can then
somebody,
pass on.
I talk to a life coach, I talk to a therapist, I talk to an author, I learned something I didn't know, and so it helps me. And people say, "Well, why are you doing all these shows?" It's like, well, it's because like human experience is, when I went to school, I learned the Socratic method, right? Which is you kind of learn things in a holistic way. You like when you were taught at the end of the course, you didn't just do a multiple choice. You had to write a blue book and show that you understood it. you had to show that you could understand the concepts and kind of be able to show you understood the theories in your own words and be able to present it back to the professor. And I think that's the way if you live life and you listen to people, do you continue that kind of Socratic method of learning your whole life? You never stop learning. You always get new ideas and you're never finished until you're done. My whole thing.
You never stop learning.
Yeah,
We never arrive. Life is a
yeah,
journey, right? We never arrive. How boring would it be if there was a destination and we arrived at that point? It is, we always change. We change due to our experiences, due to the people that we surround ourselves. And that is a beautiful thing, that we have the capacity to constantly change, which really makes us be in control, right? We are creators of our life. And my mission is
yes, it
to
is.
empower and help mothers
Yeah.
and teens to live their best life and end suffering for all of them. So I want to show you again before we finish up. Please go visit momhelpmebook.com. It is completely free, and you will get the workbook as a bonus, uh, uh, to go with the book. That really is
Well,
very
I want to thank
heavily
you for being on the
researched
Family Electric Ghost
with
podcast and remind
proven
everybody
strategies and
you'll be able
tools
to
that you can
click on
apply
that
immediately.
https://momhelpmebook.com. That's fully clickable when we're fully published on all the podcast platforms. We're almost on, we're on every platform you can listen to or watch a podcast. So you will be able to click through on that. And I want to thank you for being on the show on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. I believe it's very useful information for a lot of people, a lot of parents that might be
It was
struggling
my
with this
absolute
issue.
pleasure. Thank you
And,
for having
there's
me.
always light at the end of the tunnel. As long as you wake up the next day, you can always solve something. So I always feel, that, just don't despair. Just try to find out more information. And, we're giving you a link here that you can check something out that maybe things haven't been working for you and maybe this will work. So check it out. And thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.